During a concert, musicians in the orchestra follow the conductor's instruction as they play their instruments. When the violinist draws his bow, the violin will make some deeply moving sound. Musicians in the wind section follow and make various sounds. Now it is the drummer's turn to follow the baton's instruction and make some rhythmic sound to enhance the atmosphere. Sounds produced by the various instruments merge together and go into the ears of the audience to become wonderful music. How do musical instruments produce sound? There are 4 strings on a violin. During performances, the musician will use the bow to make the strings vibrate. When the strings vibrate, sound will be produced. This is a concert piano. Opening the cover, we can see many metallic strings inside. There's a tiny wooden hammer connected to the keyboard underneath each string. During performances, the pianist will press his fingers onto the keyboard. As the finger is pressed onto each piano key, the tiny hammer connected to the key will strike the string, which will then vibrate and produce sound. During jazz performances, the drummer uses drumsticks to strike the drum set and cymbals. When the drumsticks hit the drum surface, it vibrates incessantly and at the same time produces sound. If we press our hand onto the drum surface, the vibration stops and sound can no longer be heard. Similarly, when the drumsticks hit the cymbal, it vibrates incessantly and produces sound. When we press our hand onto it, the vibration stops and sound can no longer be heard. From the above examples, we understand that sound is produced when substances vibrate. There are 2 loudspeakers in this radio. They're made of paper. When electricity passes through the paper, it vibrates and produces sound. When we shut off the power, the vibration stops and no more sound is produced. Now let's connect the loudspeaker to a transparent tube, the bottom of which is spread with foam beads. When electricity passes through, the loudspeaker vibrates and produces sound. The foam beads are affected by the vibration and are pushed to and fro. When power is increased, the vibration in the loudspeaker intensifies and the sound produced is louder. The movement of the foam beads becomes more vigorous. The loudspeaker and the foam beads are completely separate. Between them there is only air. This experiment proves that sound can travel through air. Let's put an alarm clock inside this sealed-off bell jar. Now we'll turn on the alarm. We can hear it ringing. And if we use this air pump to extract the air inside the bell jar, we'll create a vacuum environment. Do you notice if there's any change in the ringing sound of the clock? It disappears totally. Why? Now we pump air slowly back into it and notice what happens. Sound cannot be transmitted in a vacuum environment. This again proves that air is needed for the transmission of sound. Hit this tuning fork. The sound will be transmitted to everywhere in the air. How does air help to transmit sound? Hit a tuning fork and place it next to a hanging foam bead. Notice what happens. Now hit the tuning fork again and place it next to a row of hanging foam beads. Notice what happens. This experiment shows how the sound produced by the tuning fork is transmitted in the air. Each bead represents a particle. Air is made up of particles. Now let's take a look at how these particles transmit sound. When the tuning fork vibrates in the air, it hits the particle nearest to it, causing that to vibrate and hit the second particle. The vibration of the second particle will hit the third particle, causing it to vibrate and hit the one next to it. The vibration continues through the particles, and thus sound is transmitted and spread around. As there are particles all around the tuning fork, the sound produced by its vibration will be transmitted and spread in all directions. Not only does sound travel through the air, it can also travel through liquids and solids, all at different speeds. The speed of sound travelling through the air is 346 meters per second, whereas through water, the speed is 1,498 meters per second. With iron as the transmitting medium, sound travels even faster at 5,200 meters per second. two tuning forks. This one produces a higher tone and the other produces a lower one. Why is there such a difference? It's because there's a difference in the vibrations of the arms of the fork. When the fork arm is hit, it moves backwards. Then it quickly returns to its original position and moves forwards. And then it repeats the backward and forward movement again and again. This periodic rapid to and fro movement of a substance is called vibration. When the fork arm is hit, it moves backwards and then forwards and back again to its original position. The cycle for this change of position is called one vibration. Frequency is the number of vibrations that happen each second. The unit is measured in hertz, in short form Hz. 1 hertz means there's one cycle per second. The number on the tuning fork represents its vibration frequency. The frequency for this fork is 256 Hz and for the other one 512 Hz. This equipment can produce sounds of different frequencies. On average, people can hear sounds within a frequency range of 20 to 20,000 Hz. Any sound with a frequency of more than 20,000 Hz is called ultrasound. In nature, wind, waves, crickets and bats can all produce ultrasound. It's only that we cannot hear such sounds. Bats live in dark caves and therefore cannot rely on vision, so they produce ultrasound and use the echo for positioning. Scientists make use of the same principle in their use of ultrasound to locate schools of fish, to create images for internal organs and check abnormalities. It's also used to produce images of the growing fetus inside the womb of a pregnant woman. Ultrasound can produce vigorous vibration in water, which is sufficient to remove the dirt attached to jewelry or glasses. Everyone has two ears, one on each side of the head. The ear consists of three main parts: the external, middle and inner ear. The external ear is composed of the pinna and external auditory canal. The pinna is commonly known as the ear shell and it looks like a funnel. It's used for collecting sound waves in the air. This slightly curved passage is the external auditory canal. It's covered with fine hair with glands producing sebum. It acts to prevent the intrusion of dust and insects. At the end of the tunnel is the eardrum, which is part of the middle ear. The drum membrane is very thin, tough and elastic. Its shape is similar to the leather surface of the musical drum that we saw earlier. The eardrum spreads over the surface of the middle ear and connects to the ear bones. The middle ear is an empty body. There are 3 ear bones inside connected to one another. These bones are the tiniest bones in the human body. At the bottom of the middle ear is a slanting tube leading to the throat. This is called the eustachian tube. Air enters the middle ear via this tube through either the mouth or the nose. In such a way, pressure on both sides of the eardrum is equalized. The middle and the inner ear are also separated from each other by a thin membrane. The main part of the inner ear is the cochlea, which looks like a snail shell. The cochlea consists of a long, winding circular tube. If we pull this tube straight and cut across it, we can see from the cross-section that a thin membrane separates it into the inner and outer tubes. The entrance to both tubes is connected to the last ear bone of the middle ear. The outer tube is filled with liquid and the inner tube is filled with many sensory cells. These cells are called hairy cells and are used to receive sound waves. The hairy cells in the inner ear are connected to the auditory nerve. The pinna collects sound from the outside. This then passes through the external auditory canal and reaches the eardrum. Sound waves cause the eardrum to vibrate, which lifts up the ear bones. As the ear bones function as levers, the vibration is magnified. That's why we can hear even some very faint sounds. On the other hand, if the sound is too loud, the ear bones will press against one another to minimize the vibration. When vibration reaches the cochlea, it will cause the fluid inside the inner tube to vibrate. This then stimulates the hairy cells. As the hairy cells are connected to auditory nerves, the signals caused by the vibration will be sent to the brain. Having been analysed by the brain, the signals can be heard by us as sound. We can hear sound because of the vibration on the eardrum caused by sound waves, which leads to a series of physical and biological changes. However, sometimes the eardrum cannot vibrate for a number of reasons, such as the accumulation of excessive dirt, flooding in the external auditory canal, inflammation of the eardrum, or piercing of the eardrum. To maintain proper hearing, we have to protect the eardrum well. The best way is to keep the ears clean. If water gets into them when we're swimming or washing our hair, we should use clean cotton wool to wipe them dry. If there's excessive secretion in the external auditory canal, or if some insects or foreign objects get in there, do not try to force them out. This is because using a finger or some hard objects to scratch inside the ear could easily cause inflammation or piercing of the eardrum. If anything like this happens, we should consult a specialist to help us clear out the foreign substances stuck inside the ear. When we hear an excessively loud sound, we should cover our ears with our hands and open our mouth. In such a way, the pressure exerted on both sides of the eardrum can be equalized and the drum would not be broken. In a similar way, when we take an airplane or a high-speed lift, our ears will feel very uncomfortable. This is because the external pressure is lowered, causing an imbalance in the pressure exerted on both sides of the eardrum. If this happens, we can try to swallow some saliva, thereby forcing air into our eustachian tube so as to regain a balance in pressure on both sides of the eardrum. When we have problems with our breathing system, we should go consult a doctor. Do not blow your nose hard, because if you do, germs may enter the eustachian tube and then spread to the middle ear, causing inflammation. All in all, we should protect our ears carefully. Consult a doctor in case of any discomfort. If you do this, the function of your ears will not be damaged. Our surroundings are filled with all kinds of sound. Some, such as beautiful music, are pleasant and comforting. Some, such as the noise from double-decker buses, building drills and pile drivers, are monotonous, annoying and disturbing. These sounds are known as noise pollution. The magnitude of noise is measured in the unit of decibel with the symbol dB. This electronic equipment is called a decibel meter and is used to measure the magnitude of noise. Check out how many decibels this taxi produces. How about a double-decker bus? The Environmental Protection Department has measured the magnitude of noise under all kinds of environmental conditions and compiled this table of noise levels. This is a quiet broadcast room. This is the quiet and green countryside. If you're in the library and talk to people within 2 meters of you, you would create noise of 40 decibels. Clerks working in an office would produce 50 decibels. A family gathered after dinner to chat would produce 60 decibels. If you're within 25 meters of busy traffic, you would hear noise of 70 decibels. If there's a bulldozer or pile driver operating on a construction site, you would hear noise of 90 to 100 decibels if you were within 10 meters of it. Heavy music in a disco will produce up to 100 decibels.
Long-term exposure to noise pollution will lead to undesirable effects on our body. The longer the exposure, the stronger the noise, so the more severe will be the effects. For instance, in a noisy environment, we cannot hear one another talking, and hence cannot communicate. This might also affect our mood, making us irritable, which could in turn result in lower working efficiency. In some cases, it might even lead to accidents at work. Long-term exposure to a noisy environment will cause the hairy cells in the inner ear to die. When these cells die, our hearing capacity is affected, as they cannot regenerate. Therefore, long-term exposure to a noisy environment might cause permanent loss of hearing capacity.
To protect the public from being harmed by noise pollution, the government has passed the Noise Control Ordinance in an attempt to limit the following 6 types of noise pollution. Noise coming from domestic premises and public places. Noise coming from construction sites. Noise coming from commercial and industrial premises. Noise from intruder alarm systems. Noise from specified powered mechanical equipment, such as handheld pneumatic hammers or air compressors. And finally, noise from vehicles. According to the Noise Control Ordinance, no disturbing noise should be produced from domestic premises or public places between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next day, on weekdays and at any time on holidays. It also stipulates that no work is allowed on construction sites between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next day on weekdays and at any time during holidays, unless special permission is granted. If we're bothered by noise pollution, what should we do? The Environmental Protection Department responds by saying that if we're disturbed by noise pollution, we can complain by dialing the EPD hotline. We can also report to the nearby police station in case of noise pollution from domestic premises and public places, as well as from construction sites. On receiving complaints about commercial and industrial noise pollution, the EPD will send officers to investigate. If it is confirmed that the noise produced exceeds the acceptable level, the EPD will issue a noise abatement notice requesting the noisemaker to lower the noise level and improve the situation. If the noisemaker fails to act, the EPD may prosecute. For violating the Noise Control Ordinance, the maximum penalty is a $200,000 fine. It's necessary for the public as well as commercial and industrial enterprises to cooperate so as to minimize the possible disturbance to the nearby residents and ensure that we can enjoy a comfortable and quiet environment.
As noise pollution will cause the death of hairy cells in the inner ear, and these cells cannot regenerate, we should try to protect our ears and hearing. Try to avoid exposing yourself to any excessively noisy environment. The first step is to find out the source of the noise pollution. Reduce the production of noise, for instance, by using quieter machines and adopting the use of noise eliminating shields. Make sure to check and maintain these machines periodically. Secondly, control the transmission of noise. You can do this by, for example, isolating the source of noise pollution or using soundproof panels. Thirdly, workers should wear protective devices, such as ear shields and earplugs. When wearing ear shields, a lot of people will leave the shield half covering their ears, only so as to listen to other people talking. This is not a good idea, as it will weaken their protective function. The proper way is to cover the entire ear with the shield. There are also proper steps for wearing earplugs. Put your hand around behind your head and pull your ear upwards and backwards to straighten the external auditory canal. Then place the plug inside the ear. Follow the same step with the other ear.